A notification pinged in my mind. A new set of tasks was available for me to claim. I looked over the options, weighing my choices. Task 1 required me to kill 200 blood-sucking shadow willows. The reward was a plant killer title medal. It was a purple-grade special piece of equipment that added 10 points to every single one of my attributes: strength, agility, spirit, and endurance. On top of that, it dealt an extra 10% damage to all wood attribute beasts. Since medals didn't take up an equipment slot, those bonuses were basically free stats. It was like wearing an extra piece of level 15 blue gear. But there was a catch. 200 of those trees was a massive number. Shadow willows weren't exactly common in the Ghost Shadow Forest. I'd be lucky to find one every half hour. If I spent my whole week hunting them, I'd only end up with 4,000 points. My teacher, Chui Shan, had warned us not to slack off. I couldn't afford to waste my time on a grind that wouldn't put me at the top of the leaderboard. Task 2 was much more practical. I only had to kill 10 shadow willows. The reward was a bottle of 1000 gene potion and a monster-finding paperman. The potion would give me a permanent 10-point boost to my strength, and the paperman could lead me to nearby monsters of the same type up to 100 times. I didn't hesitate. I picked Task 2. I headed deeper into the mist. Before long, I spotted a massive tree swaying through the fog like an old man out for a stroll. I flicked my wrist, and my flying sword streaked out. One strike was all it took to cleave the trunk in half. The tree withered instantly. 20 points were added to my score, and my task progress sat at 1 out of 10. An hour later, I had finished the job. I opened my bag and found a blood-red potion and a small, delicate paper figure. I downed the 1000 gene potion immediately, feeling the surge of power as my strength increased. Then, I pulled out the paper man, ready to speed up my hunt. Just as I was about to move on, the task panel refreshed again. It was a similar choice. Task 1 asked for 1,000 forest specters in exchange for a ghost killer medal. Again, the stats were great, but the number was insane. Even if specters were common, killing 1,000 in 5 days was a stretch. Task 2 was simpler. Kill 100 forest specters. The reward was a concentrated spirit potion for 10 permanent spirit points and another monster-finding paperman. I took the second option. I found one specter, killed it, and then activated the paperman. The little figure took flight, darting through the trees. I followed close behind, letting it lead me straight to the next target. It saved me hours of wandering. 2 days flew by. The results were incredible. I had completed 5 rounds of tasks and leveled up to 17. I had hunted shadow willows, forest specters, ghost fire foxes, and decaying woodcutters. Each task gave me a permanent attribute potion and another paperman, keeping my efficiency at its peak. By the 5th task, the difficulty spiked. I had to hunt 100 floating corpses. These were level 30 elite-grade beasts. The reward changed too. Instead of a potion, I was promised an equipment blind box. I realized then that I was on a chain quest. Each task led to the next, building up to a grand finale. I was glad I hadn't picked the long-term medal tasks, or I would have missed out on this. The floating corpses were level 30, but they weren't a threat to me. With my Azure Sword and my sword controlling technique, I could take them down in 2 hits. If I aimed for a weak spot, I could even one-shot them. I finished the task without breaking a sweat. When I turned it in, the task panel finally went quiet. No more new missions. I pulled out my soul collector to check my total score. Between the elite kills, the regular monsters, and everything I had cut down along the way, I had racked up 15,600 points. I was certain I was in the top 3, if not number 1. Finally, I pulled out the equipment blind box. The last time I opened a weapon box, I got my golden grade Azure Sword. I wondered if my luck would hold. I activated the box. It cracked open, glowing with a flickering light as icons of different gear flashed rapidly before my eyes. The light intensified, blinding me for a second, and then it settled. The box vanished. In its place was a white robe embroidered with intricate gold patterns. My eyes widened. It wasn't just the golden shimmer that caught my attention, proving it was a rare legendary item. It was the sheer presence of the garment. The style of this robe was breathtaking. It was ancient, elegant, and light as a feather. Even without a breeze, the fabric seemed to drift and flow around me. Golden dragon patterns were embroidered down the sleeves, and jade pendants hung from the shoulders as accents. At the waist, a soaring crane was etched in ink-like detail. It was perfect, but the stats? They were even more insane. The item was called the Golden Feather Robe. It was a gold-grade legendary item with a level 15 requirement. Most importantly, it was class-specific, for sword immortals only. It provided 380 points of defense, 34 strength, over 100 agility, and 98 spirit. That wasn't all. While in my sword kinesis state, my damage and attack speed would increase by 20%. Out of combat, my movement speed jumped by 50%. But the real game-changer was the skill boost. It added a level to my first moonrise technique. At level 2, my movement speed during that skill jumped from 300 to 400%. I still had that near-invincible 99% dodge rate. But now, if I held my sword while the skill was active, I unlocked a new move, Sword Trek. Sword Trek allowed me to blink forward up to 20 meters, dealing 300% damage to anyone in my path. I could do this 3 times in a row. On the 4th activation, I would instantly teleport back to my starting position. I stared at the screen in awe. This meant I could dive into the heart of an army, take a commander's head, and vanish before anyone even saw my shadow. It was the ultimate hit-and-run skill. To put it simply, this robe was just as powerful as my Azure sword. Even though it was cloth armor, its defense rivaled level 20 purple grade heavy plate. I didn't hesitate. I swapped out my standard school uniform for the golden feather robe. The transformation was instant. I looked like a deity who had descended from the heavens. My charisma was already high, but now? I knew that going back to school would cause a literal riot. Being this handsome was a burden, but it was one I'd just have to carry. With my power surging, I decided it was time to head back to the base camp. My supplies were running low. When I first left, I only took 2 days' worth of food and water. It wasn't because I was lazy, it was the law. During the high school practice week, the Great Chin officials only allowed 2 days of supplies at a time. It forced students to check in at the camp to prove they were still alive. If someone didn't return after 2 days, they were marked as missing and a search party was sent out. It was a smart system, and honestly, after 2 days of nonstop hunting, I needed a real bed. Thanks to the 50% speed boost from my new robe, the return trip was a breeze. I felt like the wind itself was carrying me. A journey that took me 2 days of fighting to complete only took half a day to walk back. As the camp's silhouette appeared through the mist, I passed a 5-person team heading out. They were laughing and chatting until they saw me. They froze. A young girl in priest gear stared at me with her mouth open. I didn't say anything. I was used to the stares, and just kept walking. As I moved past them, their conversation drifted back to me. "Man, that guy back at camp is having a rough time," one of them said, his voice dropping. "Who did he piss off to get Li Zai so mad?" "Who knows?" another replied. "Li Zai is a jerk. Just because he has a hidden class and high stats, he thinks he owns the place. But hanging the guy up in public and beating him? That's crossing a line. We're all from First High? It's humiliating." "Yeah," a third voice sighed. "If that were me, I'd probably drop out of school. But that's the world we live in. The strong eat the weak. Let's just focus on leveling up so we don't end up like him." I slowed my pace. Li Zai. I remembered that name from a few days ago. It sounded like he was making trouble again, but I wasn't the type to go looking for drama. However, when I stepped into the camp, I realized I couldn't ignore it. A large crowd of students had gathered in the corner, whispering and pointing. Even a few teachers were standing nearby, looking on with troubled expressions. Something was definitely wrong. I didn't have any immediate plans to step in. The school rules were strict. Fighting was absolutely forbidden on campus, and anyone caught would be severely punished. But out here in the wild, as long as nobody actually died, anything went. Stealing equipment, launching sneak attacks. Even if you did it right in front of the camp teachers, they wouldn't lift a finger. They wanted us to learn that the wilderness was a cruel place where ambush and robbery were daily occurrences. They wanted us to be ruthless. A rabbit raised in a greenhouse would only be devoured by wolves the moment it stepped into the tall grass. The teachers standing nearby were acting like typical spectators, clearly having no intention of stopping the drama. I wasn't much for gossip, but as I glanced toward the commotion, I froze. Hanging from a rope in the center of the crowd was someone I recognized. Through the thin mist, I saw him, battered, bruised, and covered in wounds. But even in that state, his massive frame and heavy armor were unmistakable. It was Go Sheng, my best friend. Seeing him hung up like a piece of meat for the amusement of the crowd sent a surge of pure white heat through my chest. I moved. With my high-strength stat, I didn't just walk through the crowd, I plowed through them. People were sent stumbling left and right as I forced my way to the front. Some were ready to start cursing me out, but the moment they saw my face, they shut their mouths. I heard a girl whisper, "He's so handsome, he must be in a real hurry." I broke into the clearing and saw 4 people standing near Go Sheng, laughing and chatting as if they were waiting for a show to start. I recognized them. They were the teammates Go Sheng had been running with for the last 2 months. Seeing them joking while their friend hung there bleeding told me everything I needed to know. They weren't his allies. They were the ones who had done this to him. Beside them stood 2 others. One was Chiohe, looking panicked and conflicted. The other was a tall, thin guy in black leather armor. He had a smug smile on his face, looking at Chiohe with an expression of forced, dramatic affection. When Chiohe saw me, her panic spiked. Lu Sheng," she stammered. The guy in black armor followed her gaze, his eyes locking onto mine. Go Sheng's 4 teammates stopped laughing and stepped up beside the man in black, their expressions turning serious. I realized then that this wasn't about Go Sheng at all. They were using him as bait. This guy had to be Li Zai? I kept my face cold and looked at Chiohe, the only person there I actually knew. What is going on here? At the sound of my voice, Chiohe acted like she was the victim. Her eyes turned red, and she started wiping away tears. "I'm sorry, Lu Sheng. I didn't want it to be like this." I tried to talk Li Zai out of it, but he insisted. I couldn't stop him. Li Zai's smile turned into a look of exaggerated heartache. He reached out and stroked Chiohe's head. "My little princess, do not cry. Your tears are pearls, and I will protect them with my life." I felt a physical wave of nausea. This was definitely Li Zai. There was no doubt about it. I lost all interest in talking to either of them. If they opened their mouths again, I was afraid I'd skip the talking and just cleave them in half with an arrow. I stepped forward, the azure sword flashing in my hand. With a single flick, a blade of light severed the rope. Go Sheng hit the ground with a heavy thud. The impact actually woke him up. He groaned, coughing and sputtering. Li Zai's 4 lackeys started to move toward me, but Li Zai held up a hand to stop them. "Lu Sheng is who I wanted anyway," Li Zai said smoothly. "Now that he's here, that shield warrior is useless." He turned back to Chiohe with an intense stare. "Though I would kill thousands for you, Xiaohe, I still want you to see me as a true gentleman." I couldn't take the cringe anymore. I knelt beside Go Sheng, grabbed the collar of his heavy armor, and dragged him over to lean against a tree. I slapped his face a few times. "Sheng, hey, you okay?" Go Sheng winced and pushed my hand away. "Brother Lu, if you keep hitting me, I won't be. Don't worry, I'm a shield warrior. I'm thick-skinned. I just need a minute." "Those bastards." He squinted his swollen eyes, then suddenly gasped. "Wait, Lu, where did you get that gear? Did you rob a bank?" I sighed, relieved he was still himself. "Forget my gear. Tell me how you ended up as a human wind chime." Go Sheng spat out some bloody phlegm and glanced at the 4 teammates. "I walked right into a trap. One of those guys is Li Zai's cousin. They knew we were close, so they used me to lure you out. I've been leveling with those snakes for months and never realized they were his lapdogs." He paused, his face turning pale. "Wait, Lu, they're here for you. You need to leave. Use the portal and get back to school. The teachers won't help you if a fight starts here." "You think you're going somewhere?" Li Zai sneered. He pulled out a massive bow wrapped in swirling black mist. A faint purple glow pulsed along the limbs of the weapon. A purple-grade item. My eyes narrowed. Purple gear only dropped from bronze-level bosses. Most students were lucky to have a single blue item, but a purple weapon was on another level. In this entire training camp, there probably weren't 20 pieces of purple gear in total. Combined with his hidden class and high level, Li Zai was a monster on paper. He raised the bow, looking solemn. "Lu Sheng, I told you. If you break my wings, I will destroy your heaven. You made my woman cry. That is a price you cannot afford. Please, just stop talking," I said, feeling like I'd been struck by a lightning bolt of pure embarrassment. His dialogue was a more effective weapon than the bow. I stood up and looked down at Go Sheng. "Stay here. I'm going to go tear his mouth off. Then I'll buy you some healing potions. Gosheng looked terrified. Lu, are you crazy? He has a hidden class and purple gear. You can't take him. You stop talking too, I muttered. Just lay low. As the tension between me and Li Zai hit the breaking point, the crowd scrambled back to avoid the crossfire. But their excitement was peaking. What's the story here? Someone whispered in the back. I missed the assembly the other day. Man, you missed out, another replied. This has been building for a while. The rumors were already flying through the crowd. Someone whispered about how a school beauty and a school hunk had confessed their feelings during the poetry assembly, only for it to end in a disaster. Both of them had been punished by the dean. Then, the school beauty's loyal dog decided to bring a crew to teach the school hunk a lesson, beating up his friend, the cow dung sitting on the ground, in the process. I didn't care about the gossip. I only cared about the guy standing in front of me. Li Zai reached into the quiver on his back and pulled out an iron arrow. He notched it onto his black grape bow. You made my princess cry 6 times, he said, his voice dripping with dramatic flair. So, I will shoot you 6 times. The pain you're about to feel is nothing compared to the heartbreak I felt watching Xiao He weep. God, I muttered. The pain of listening to you is way worse than any heartbreak. I started walking toward him. My pace was steady, neither fast nor slow. Gosheng's former teammates tried to step in to intercept me, but Li Zai waved them off with a smug smile. Stay back. This is between us. A mere archer can't even get close to me. He drew the bowstring tight. A swirl of black mist gathered around the tip of the iron arrow, the air around it shimmering and distorting from the dark energy. Shadow Arrow. It was an active skill that added dark element damage, dealing 200% attack power while shredding 30% of the target's defense and slowing them by 20%. Li Zai was a shadow archer, a hidden class. Unlike standard archers, he controlled the power of darkness, layering debuffs on his enemies to kite them into oblivion. He was one of the top students for a reason. His aim was dead on. He released the string, and the arrow whistled through the air toward my thigh, trailing a ghostly black mist. I didn't even flinch. I didn't dodge. I didn't dive. The crowd gasped. To them, I looked like a complete amateur. If I was a melee class, I should have been rushing him or using a defensive skill. Instead, I was strolling forward like I was taking a walk in the park. I was a sitting duck. Everyone expected the arrow to tear through my leg and leave me kneeling in the dirt. Then, my body blurred. As I walked, I left a trail of afterimages behind me. The arrow passed right through the center of my chest, or where my chest had been a millisecond before. It hit nothing but air. It slammed into the ground behind me with a loud thud, creating a crater the size of a wash basin and releasing a cloud of black gas. How did he do that? People shouted. The afterimages vanished. I was still walking toward Li Zai, my pace unchanged. It was as if the attack had been a hallucination. Li Zai sucked in a breath, his face paling. He didn't believe it. He snatched another arrow, notched it, and aimed for my stomach. Whoosh. The second arrow flew. Again, I became a ghost. My body flickered, an afterimage took the hit, and the dark arrow sailed harmlessly past me. The crowd was losing it. Everyone knew I was just a plain archer. They couldn't wrap their heads around how an archer was casually walking through a high-level shadow archer's attacks without breaking a sweat. I had already closed half the distance. Li Zai was starting to feel the pressure. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, but he tried to keep his cool. He reached back and grabbed another arrow, but this time, he triggered a different skill. One arrow split into 5 in midair. One real shaft, made of pure shadow energy. Shadow split arrow. Each one dealt 40% damage and stacked defense and speed reductions. It was a move designed to be impossible to dodge. No matter which way I moved, the spread would catch me. I didn't change a thing. I kept walking. My body flickered into a void of afterimages again. Thump, thump, thump. 5 arrows slammed into the dirt behind me in a perfect rhythmic pattern. They had plenty of power, but power means nothing if you can't hit the target. Li Zai's main character energy evaporated instantly. He stared at me, his mouth hanging open, completely frozen. I almost felt bad for him. This Shamat punk had terrible luck. He'd fired 7 arrows, and every single one had triggered the passive evasion of my moonwatching steps. A 99% dodge rate really was broken. Even if he had hit me, my gold-feathered armor would have soaked up the damage, and I could have healed instantly with my Azure Bow. But I didn't even need the bow yet. I was standing right in front of him. When an archer gets cornered by a melee fighter, or in this case, a faster archer, it's usually game over. Lee's eye snapped out of his shock and reacted. His body was suddenly enveloped in a thick layer of shadows. He vanished and reappeared 20 meters away. Shadow transfer. It was a blink skill, similar to a mage's teleport. He knew it had a 10-second cooldown. He had 10 seconds to land a hit and slow me down, or he was dead. But I wasn't going to give him 10 seconds. As Lee's eye raised his bow again, I flipped my wrist. A long sword surrounded by swirling water vapor appeared in my hand. Between the elegant sword, my flowing Taoist robes, and my calm expression, I looked less like a student and more like an immortal who had just stepped out of a painting. The entire field went silent. The entire field fell into a stunned silence. People didn't even have the breath left to act surprised. They were just staring at the long sword in my hand. It wasn't just the water vapor swirling around the blade. It was the unmistakable golden glow radiating from it. Gold grade. That was a rarity beyond words. Usually, you only saw gear like that as a low-probability drop from a gold-tier boss. Forget about us students. Even professional fighters over level 30 rarely owned a single piece of gold equipment. In our entire grade, there were barely 20 pieces of purple gear combined. Me pulling out a gold weapon was like bringing a tank to a knife fight. But I wasn't done breaking their minds. As the light from my sword intensified, my white and gold Taoist robes began to shimmer with that same golden radiance. The crowd gasped. My armor was gold grade too. A weapon and a chest piece, both gold? It felt unfair. I could see the why even try look on their faces. I didn't activate the glow just to show off. I needed to trigger the skill attached to the gear, sword step. With my Azure Bow stashed and my Azure Sword drawn, the requirements were met. I didn't hesitate. Gold light flowed through my veins. I swung the sword once. In an instant, I became a blur. A golden afterimage tore through the space between me and Lee's eye. The water vapor from the blade left a shimmering trail in the air, looking like a brilliant aurora. It was beautiful, but it was lethal. The first 3 dashes of sword step dealt 300% damage to anyone in the path. With my stats, that was enough to one-shot a level 25 tank. I purposely aimed slightly off-center. If I had hit him dead on, Lee's eye's head would have been rolling on the grass. Killing wasn't allowed in the camp, and the teachers were watching. My blade grazed his throat, leaving a thin red line of blood, but the real damage was to his weapon. My sword slashed right through his expensive purple-grade bow. The durability hit 0 instantly. It snapped in half, useless scrap metal. The camp erupted. Holy crap! Did you see that? What kind of skill is that? He moved 20 meters in a heartbeat. He just destroyed a purple weapon like it was a toothpick. If he'd moved that blade 3 centimeters to the left, Lee's eye would be dead. Wait, I thought he was an archer? Since when is he a sword immortal? I ignored the shouting. I stood there, holding the azure sword behind my back, looking at the golden projection I'd left behind at my starting position, a lingering image of me in a combat stance. Then, I broke the immortal vibe. I stepped forward and delivered a massive, ringing slap across Lee's eye's face. He was a glass cannon archer. My physical strength sent him spinning to the dirt, his mouth filling with blood. He tried to say something, but I didn't want to hear his main character trash talk anymore. It felt like I'd finally cleared a clogged drain. Still talking? I muttered. I followed up with a series of brutal kicks, sending him rolling across the ground. I didn't stop until I heard his ribs start to creak and groan, right on the verge of snapping. His 4 teammates finally snapped out of their trance. "What are you doing?" one of them yelled, his voice cracking. "Help my cousin." They started to rush me, but I just glanced back at them. That one look froze them in their tracks. If I could dismantle Lee's eye this easily, what were they going to do? They hesitated, but I didn't. I triggered the second dash of sword step. Another golden blur. I flickered right through the middle of their formation. The azure sword flashed 4 times in a single heartbeat. 4 screams echoed out at once as they all collapsed, clutching deep, non-lethal wounds. I flicked the blood off my blade with a cold snort. Go Shung practiced with you guys for so long. You were supposed to be a team. Instead, you sold them out the second things got tough. You're worse than dogs. Who's ever going to trust you again?" They didn't answer. They just groaned on the ground, holding their bleeding limbs. Seeing his backup go down, Lizai scrambled to his feet. He didn't look like a proud genius anymore. He looked like a terrified rat. He bolted toward the teleportation gate, desperate to escape the camp. "Running," I sneered. I triggered the third dash. I reappeared behind him like a ghost and kicked him square in the lower back. He ate dirt, sliding face-first across the clearing. He groaned, slamming his hand down to trigger his shadow transfer again. I let out a soft laugh. I triggered the fourth and final stage of the skill. My body blurred again, but this time, the afterimages vanished, and I was pulled back to my original starting position. The crowd whispered. They realized the skill had a limit, 3 dashes forward, and the fourth returns you to the start. They thought Lizai was going to get away now that my blink was on cooldown. But I wasn't finished with him. Not even close. Lizai triggered his shadow transfer again, desperate to put distance between us. He flickered away, reappearing 10 meters back. He thought he was safe. He thought he'd outrun me. But he forgot one thing. I wasn't just an archer anymore. I was a sword immortal. And a sword immortal doesn't need to chase you. I tossed the azure sword into the air. It didn't fall. It hovered right in front of me, humming with a sharp, vibrating energy. The crowd gasped. People were rubbing their eyes, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. A sword floating in midair? It defied every law of the game they knew. But I wasn't done breaking the rules. As Lizai's shadow materialized 10 meters away, I simply pointed my finger. The azure sword shrieked through the air, leaving a brilliant blue trail behind it. It was too fast for the human eye to track. Lizai didn't even have time to breathe before the blade slammed into his shoulder. The force carried him backward, pinning him firmly to a massive tree trunk. He let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the entire clearing. He was stuck, dangling there like a broken doll. The fight was over. From the moment I drew my blade, Lizai and his team never stood a chance. It wasn't a duel, it was a slaughter. The silence that followed was heavy. Lizai was the school's tough guy, and I was just the pretty boy everyone ignored. Now, the tough guy was pinned to a tree, and the pretty boy was holding all the power. Then, the crowd erupted. "What kind of strength is that?" someone yelled. "He's been holding back this whole time. If he wanted them dead, they'd be cold corpses by now." "Forget the dashes," another voice cried out. "Did you see the sword? It moved on its own. Since when do swordsmen have remote control weapons?" I ignored the chaos. I beckoned with my hand, and the azure sword pulled itself out of Lizai's shoulder, flying back to me with a graceful arc before vanishing into my inventory. I used a burst of speed to close the gap, grabbing Lizai and tossing him onto the pile with his 4 groaning teammates. "If you don't want to die, drink your potions," I said coldly. I knew the instructors were watching. I didn't want a murder charge on my hands. Lizai, trembling and pale, fumbled through his bag and pulled out a high-grade health potion. As he gulped it down, a faint red mist swirled around his wounds, stopping the bleeding. The others followed suit, desperately trying to patch themselves up. I stood over them, hands behind my back, looking down like a god judging insects. My gaze alone made Lizai swallow hard in fear. "Because of Chiohi, you wanted to find trouble with me," I began, my voice low. "You beat my friend. You wanted to ruin my future. Right?" They all flinched. "So," I continued, "how are we going to settle this?" Lizai grit his teeth, trying to find some shred of his old bravado. "I did it for love. I wanted the princess to see her knight, to see me stand and die for her." I felt a vein pop in my forehead. "Speak like a human being," I warned. The azure sword flickered back into existence, buzzing angrily around his head. "Wait. Don't kill me," Lizai shrieked, his romantic delusions vanishing instantly. I'm sorry. I apologize. If I wanted a normal apology, I wouldn't have used the sword," I snapped, letting the blade hover inches from his throat. "Apologies are cheap. Give me something with actual sincerity." Like what?" they stammered. "Everything," I said. "Empty your bags. Now." They didn't dare argue. One by one, they started dumping their inventories onto the grass. 5 piles of loot grew in front of me. Equipment, potions, and crafting materials they'd spent 2 days gathering. I looked through it all, but honestly, it was mostly junk. White and blue-grade gear. Not a single purple item in the bunch. I took Li Zai's high-grade potions and let Goshing pick out a few pieces of gear he could actually use. The rest of the pile was probably worth a few $1,000, but I wasn't a scavenger. I had no interest in their trash. Take your junk back? I said, tossing the gear aside. But I'm taking your points. I grabbed their soul collectors and transferred every single point they had to my own device. Between the 5 of them, they had about 6,000 points. Added to my total, I was sitting at over 22,000. I was almost certainly in first place. I was ready to walk away, but then my eyes caught someone standing off to the side. Chiohi. She'd been trying to play the silent observer, but when our eyes met, she turned pale. Lin Yuan, let me explain, she stammered, her eyes wide with fake terror. Li Zai started it. He kept asking about us, and I just vented a little. I didn't know he'd do this. I tried to stop him, I really did. You saw me earlier, right? I didn't want a conflict. Her voice got smaller and smaller as I walked toward her. I didn't look at her like a girl. I didn't look at her with any emotion at all. To me, she was just a problem that needed solving. So, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. This was all Li Zai's idea? You're just the innocent bystander caught in the middle. Yes, exactly, she said, though her voice lacked any real conviction. I didn't have the energy to deal with a White Lotus act. I reached out my hand. Give me your soul collector, I said. You probably don't have anything worth taking in your bag, so I'll just settle for your points. Chiohi froze, staring at me in total disbelief. You're really going to steal my points too? Chiohi asked, her voice trembling. But, I'm a girl. I stared at her for a second, then nodded. You're right. Ladies first. I should have robbed you before the guys. I didn't blink. I just held out my hand again. Chiohi realized then that her gender meant nothing to me. In my eyes, she was exactly the same as Li Zai. With tears welling up, she reluctantly handed over her soul collector. I checked the balance. 4,000 points. Not bad at all. Li Zai must have been acting like a loyal lapdog, carrying her through levels and feeding her points for the past 2 days. I pocketed the unexpected windfall and waved them off. Get lost, I muttered. As the group scrambled away, the crowd of onlookers began to thin out. Gosheng stumbled over, having downed a healing potion. His wounds were closing, but he still looked a bit shaky. Brother Lu, he whispered, looking at me with genuine awe. You're a beast. You didn't even spare my goddess. Is this what it's like to be handsome? Do you just not see women as human? I rolled my eyes. I didn't slap her. That makes me a gentleman. I looked at him, my expression deadpan. She acts innocent while causing chaos everywhere she goes. She's the reason you were hanging from a tree getting beaten. And you still call her a goddess? Gosheng went quiet, looking like he was deep in thought. I actually thought for a moment that he'd finally woken up. Then he opened his mouth. I feel like my goddess must have had her reasons. She was probably forced into it. I felt a headache coming on. This guy was the ultimate simp. I didn't even want to talk to him anymore. But Gosheng didn't notice my silence. He looked genuinely worried now. Hey, Brother Lu, what are the points actually for? If Chiohi's score is too low, will it hurt her college entrance chances? Even if it doesn't, it might affect the resources the school gives her. I still have 1,000 points left. Do you think I should give them to her? Maybe it'll move her heart. I didn't answer. I just turned around and started walking. I regretted saving him. I really did. I should have left him hanging on that tree until the blood rushed to his head and cleared his brain. Li Zai and his crew wouldn't be bothering us again anytime soon. My plan was to rest at the camp for a day, restock my supplies, and then get back to grinding points. Gosheng finally stopped talking about his goddess and told me his own plan. He was going back to the school's teleportation hall to see if any team needed a frontline tank. If not, he'd go to the Thorny Hills to solo. He was level 14 and the area was level 15. He'd be slow, but he'd survive. As we were talking, a girl's clear voice rang out from nearby. You too. Do you have a fixed team? If not, want to join us? We both turned around. Standing there was a girl with short hair and straight bangs, smiling at us. She wore light leather armor and carried a wooden shortbow on her back. She was an archer type. She wasn't a world-class beauty, but she was cute, and her eyes were incredibly bright. like they were full of stars. I didn't recognize her. I'd just finished thumping the school's top bully, so it made sense people would try to scout me. I wasn't interested. Sorry, I said. I prefer soloing. I'm not looking for a team. Hee hee. She laughed, as if she'd expected that answer. You think I'm just trying to ride your coattails because you're strong? In this team, I'm not sure who'd be carrying whom. She snapped her fingers. Her basic info materialized above her head. Name, Tao Tao. Level, 18. Class, Elf Ranger, hidden class. The rest of her stats were hidden, which was standard practice for privacy. But those 2 words, hidden class, told me everything I needed to know. This girl was a powerhouse. The name sounded familiar. Beside me, Gosheng let out a strangled gasp. You're the hidden class Tao Tao. That's me, she said, her chest puffed out with pride. I nudged Gosheng. Who is she? You know her. Brother Liu, are you serious? Gosheng hissed. The combat power rankings on the school forum? She's the one at the top. I'd heard of the rankings. Some students with a knack for gossip compiled data on everyone's classes, gear, and grades to rank the top 100 students. Li Zai was ranked 10th. I was somewhere around 32nd, though that was definitely going to change after today. I usually didn't pay attention to that stuff. She's ranked 2nd on the freshman power list, Gosheng explained. Her Elf Ranger traits are insane. Damage, defense, speed. She's top tier in everything. She's been a legend since the first year. I coughed into my hand, feeling a bit embarrassed that I didn't know the local celebrity. But one thing didn't make sense. If she's that good, why is she only 2nd? The guy in 1st is named Yunyu, Gosheng whispered. He's a void mage, another hidden class. He's not great at grinding mobs, but in a 1v1 fight, he's unbeatable. Tao Tao challenged him a dozen times and lost every single one. Yunyu has a record of 136 wins and 0 losses. Top universities were already trying to recruit him before the year even started. Tao Tao's smile twitched. She clearly didn't like being reminded of why she was number 2. Hey, she interrupted, her voice sharp. Stop gossiping about unimportant things. You need to understand something, Tao Tao said, puffing out her chest. When it comes to grinding mobs, I'm the best in the whole school. I'm not looking for a team so I can hide behind someone's back. She paused, looking at me with a confident smirk. She clearly thought she had me hooked. So what do you say, handsome? Ready to join up? I didn't even blink. I shook my head again. Sorry. Still not interested. Tao Tao's jaw dropped. She stood there, speechless, for a good few seconds. Look, I explained, trying to be polite. Your damage output might be high, but I don't need more damage. I need monsters. Adding another person to the mix just means splitting the experience and the points. It's more efficient if I go solo. I turned to leave, but she called out behind me. Wait, I didn't explain it properly. I'm not asking you to join a regular grinding party. I found a chance realm. I stopped in my tracks. A chance realm? Now she had my attention. In this world, chance realms are special dungeons that spawn randomly in the wild. They only last for 3 to 5 days before vanishing forever. But the real draw isn't just their rarity, it's the loot. Normal dungeons drop random gear, but a chance realm tailors its rewards to the person who clears it. It's the best way to get exclusive gear or skill books for hidden classes. For most people, the odds of finding hidden class items in the wild are less than 1 in 1,000. Even with my glitched task system, I wasn't going to turn down a guaranteed drop for a sword immortal. Nobody says no to more power. Tao Tao noticed my change in attitude and grinned. I knew it. Everyone says you're just a swordsman, but after watching you wreck Li Zai, I know you're something else. You've got a hidden class too, don't you? You can't afford to miss this. Before I could answer, my task panel flickered to life in my vision. New task available. Option 1. Sneer at Tao Tao and say, Humph, a mere chance realm is beneath me. Reward, +5 charisma. Option 2. Form a team and enter the chance realm. Reward, exclusive sword immortal passive skill, sword scar. The choice was obvious. I was already handsome enough. I didn't need 5 more points of charisma. But a passive skill? Passives are the backbone of any elite build. I didn't know what sword scar did yet, but if it was exclusive to my class, it had to be broken. My only concern was the points. I still didn't know what the soul points were for, and I didn't want to lose out on a bigger reward later by wasting time in a dungeon now. But a guaranteed skill book tipped the scales. I kept my face neutral, playing hard to get. I might be interested, I said slowly. But what about the points? We're supposed to be collecting souls for the trial. How do we split the score? Tao Tao waved her hand dismissively. Who cares about points? It's probably just some gimmick the school teachers dreamed up. They'll probably just trade them for cash or basic resources at the end. That's nothing compared to a chance realm reward. If you want the points, you can have them all. We've already gathered plenty. Deal, I said instantly. I didn't want to give her a chance to change her mind. I held out my hand. Let's team up. But once the realm is cleared, we go our separate ways. Fine by me, she said, shaking my hand. I prefer soloing anyway. She sent me a team invite, and to my surprise, she sent one to Goshing too. He looked like he'd just won the lottery. Me too, Goshing stammered. But I'm just a shield warrior. I'm nowhere near Lu Shang's level. It doesn't matter, Tao Tao replied. The realm has a 4-person minimum. We've been waiting forever to find people worth taking. Since you're his friend, you're in. Just stand at the front and take the hits. I'll handle the rest. Goshing nodded eagerly. He was finally getting a shot at the big leagues. I checked the team interface. There was a 4th name already there. Looking at the map, I saw the 4th member was currently inside one of the resting tents in the camp. Where's the other one? I asked. Tao Tao stretched, her leather armor shifting to reveal a glimpse of her waist. Resting. We've been grinding for 2 days straight. He burned through his mana and needed a nap. I was out here looking for anyone who looked capable of soloing the Ghost Woods. I thought about asking Li Zai, but that guy talks too much. You're much better. She looked me up and down with a playful smirk. Plus, even if you were useless, you're easy on the eyes. You'd make a great mascot. I rolled my eyes, which only made her laugh. Then, she leaned in close, whispering so the rest of the camp wouldn't hear. Just so you know, she teased, pointing toward the tent. My teammate. She's a total beauty. But she has such a cold personality, Tao Tao said, leaning in closer. It's like she's not even interested in men. I've heard for a long time that Lu Shang, the top heartthrob of number 1 middle school, was insanely handsome. Seeing you in person today, I have to agree. You're way better than those guys who call themselves handsome, but are actually just sissies. Plus, your skills are flashy. When we hit the secret realm, try to show off a bit. Maybe you can make my best friend act a little more normal. She sighed, looking toward the tent. I'm not saying she needs to drool over guys, but at least she could stop acting like a nun who rolls her eyes the second a man speaks. I was speechless. I stood there in silence for a long time before finally asking, your best friend? Our other teammate. Who exactly is she? Tao Tao winked at me, a playful smirk on her face. You'll find out soon enough. She was being a tease, so I decided to change the subject. When do we head out? Tao Tao thought for a second. 8 hours from now. I'm exhausted and need some sleep. You guys probably do too. Let's meet back here in 8 hours, and then we'll take you to the Opportunity Secret Realm. No problem, I said. It's a deal. Go Sheng, and I nodded. We found a teacher, grabbed 2 sleeping bags, and headed into the boys' tent. With teachers guarding the area, it was safe. I found a spot and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. 8 hours later, I woke up to the sound of Gosheng talking in his sleep. He kept mumbling, Xiao he, over and over again. I kicked him awake. We did a quick wash-up and headed to the meeting spot. When we arrived, 2 people were already waiting. One was Tao Tao. The other had to be her best friend. She was tall, wearing long purple mage robes, with her back turned to us. She was leaning against a tree, chatting with Tao Tao. From behind, her hair was stunning, long, black, and silky, falling all the way to her waist like a waterfall. It was the kind of silhouette that would make any schoolboy fall in love instantly. Tao Tao saw us and straightened up. They're here, she told the girl. The girl turned around. Her face was a perfect match for her figure. She was beautiful, honestly, more beautiful than Tao Tao. Even Xiao he couldn't quite compare. But there were 2 things off about her. First, her expression was freezing cold. Second, her skin wasn't just pale, it was a sickly, morbid white, lacking any healthy glow. Combined with her icy stare, she gave off a vibe that made a shiver run down my spine. Sorry, are we late? I called out as we approached. Tao Tao checked her leather wristwatch. You're fine. We still have 10 minutes. We just got here early. Let me introduce you. This is my teammate, Yinyu. Go Sheng gasped, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. Go Sheng asked, Yinyu? I'm actually on a team with Yinyu? What kind of luck is this? I was surprised too. I'd heard that while Tao Tao's grades were good, she could never beat Yinyu in a duel. I assumed they were rivals who hated each other. I never expected the top-ranked fighter in the school to be her best friend. No wonder Tao Tao felt confident bringing two dead weights, like us, along. With these two working together, any boss under level 20 would be a piece of cake. Tao Tao introduced me, and Go Sheng. Throughout the whole thing, Yinyu just gave a tiny nod. She didn't say a single word. Go Sheng looked nervous. He reached out to tug on my sleeve, probably to ask if she was a mute, but Tao Tao beat him to it. My best friend doesn't like to talk, Tao Tao explained. When we're in the realm, don't annoy her. She'll tell you when she needs you to cooperate. Go Sheng shut his mouth instantly. He knew he was the tag-along here, and he acted like it. Tao Tao acted as the glue for the group, her outgoing personality, keeping things moving. We left the camp and headed deeper into the ghost woods. The direction she took was the exact opposite of where I had been grinding earlier. We walked for 3 hours and barely saw any beasts. We only ran into 4 blood-sucking eagles, which Tao Tao took down with 3 quick arrows. Most students would have turned back seeing so few monsters, which was probably why this secret realm hadn't been discovered yet. By noon, the fog began to thin. We reached a wide, open clearing. There were no other trees, only a massive, ancient willow tree in the center. It was so thick it would take 5 people to wrap their arms around it. It looked like it had sucked the nutrients out of everything else nearby. Its long branches hung down like limp tentacles, swaying slowly even though there was no wind. It felt oppressive just looking at it. We're here, Tao Tao said, stopping in front of the tree. Go Sheng looked around, shivering at the heavy, eerie energy in the air. But there's nothing here. Tao Tao smirked. If you could see it, everyone else could too. We hit it before we went back to find teammates. Yu, deactivate the skill. Yinyu let out a tiny It was so quiet I wasn't sure if she'd actually spoken or just breathed through her nose. She stepped forward and waved her hand twice. Suddenly, the space in front of the willow tree distorted. A sharp wind whipped up, as if an invisible hand had grabbed a curtain and ripped it away. The mist vanished, revealing a glowing portal. Impressive, right? Tao Tao bragged, tilting her chin up. Yu is a void mage. Her utility skills are top tier. Hiding a portal is easy for her. Let's go. The energy is getting unstable. It'll probably only last another day, so we need to clear it before it disappears. Let's move, I agreed. We walked up to the portal. As I reached out to touch it, a system notification flashed in my eyes. Warning. Do you wish to enter the Opportunity Secret Realm, Blood Eagle Village? Difficulty, unknown. Level, unknown. Required players, 4 to 6. Current ready count, 0/4. Blood Eagle Village. Given that this was hidden inside a place as creepy as the Ghost Woods, I knew this wasn't going to be a scenic tour with birds and flowers. But I wasn't about to let a name scare me. I pressed confirm and stepped through. I didn't hesitate. I selected enter on the system interface. Once the counter hit 4 out of 4, the portal surged with power. A fierce wind whipped up, creating a violent vacuum that sucked us all into the swirling light. The world blurred. After a few seconds of feeling like my body was being pulled apart, the sensation vanished. We landed on solid ground. I looked around. We were on a narrow dirt path cutting through endless rice paddies. On both sides, the fields stretched into a thick, suffocating darkness. The rice stalks were overgrown and tangled with wild weeds, swaying rhythmically in the cold air. It was clear no one had tended to this land in decades. I followed the path with my eyes. In the distance, a dilapidated village sat shrouded in the night. There wasn't a single light flickering in any of the windows. It looked dead. Then, the sound hit us. It was the crying of a baby. Then another. Then dozens. The wailing rose and fell, echoing through the air with a haunting, melodic quality that felt impossible. We were still a good distance from the village, but the screams sounded like they were being whispered directly into my ear. It made my skin crawl and my scalp go numb. Aside from those cries, the world was silent. The atmosphere was heavy with something foul. I frowned, trying to shake off the unease. I opened my system panel to see if I could turn in my previous quest, but something else caught my eye. A new set of details had appeared for the Secret Realm. Secret Realm, Blood Eagle Village. Difficulty, Abyss. Capacity, 4 to 6 players. The description began to scroll. 300 years ago, this place was called Tree Eagle Village, built around a 1,000-year-old spirit tree. The tree had a soul that manifested as a young woman. She was the village's guardian deity, protecting them from beasts for generations. Eventually, the tree spirit fell in love with the village blacksmith and became pregnant. While she was carrying the child, she had to stay within the spirit tree to recover, leaving the village temporarily unprotected. That's when a king of grudge lions attacked. The lion wanted to eat the spirit's essence to grow stronger, but the tree's barrier was too powerful. So, the lion started slaughtering villagers. It gave the blacksmith an ultimatum: bring out the spirit's newborn child, and it would leave the village in peace. The blacksmith hesitated, but the villagers turned on him. They pressured and cursed him until he broke. He waited until the tree spirit was at her weakest after giving birth, stole the infant, and handed it to the lion. The lion didn't leave. It drained the baby's blood on the spot and tossed the tiny, lifeless body aside like trash. Having consumed the child's essence, the lion could now bypass the tree's barrier. It stormed inside to finish off the mother. A day later, the tree spirit emerged from the tree, drenched in blood. The villagers cheered, thinking their protector had won. But then, a wave of black, toxic resentment erupted from her body. Every villager, including the blacksmith she once loved, felt their stomachs swell. Within days, sharp-toothed infants tore through their bellies from the inside out. Their organs were gone, replaced by dry, wooden branches that propped up their sagging skin. The village fell silent, replaced only by the piercing cries of those monstrous infants. Some say they saw the spirit pick up the shriveled corpse of her original child and vanish into the mist. No one knew if the thing that survived was the spirit, the lion, or a fusion of both. Objective: locate and destroy the source of resentment in Blood Eagle Village. We all stood there in silence. Even Tao Tao, who usually couldn't stop talking, was quiet. As someone who had read plenty of web novels in my past life, I had a bit more mental resistance, but the story was still grim. The goal is clear, I said, breaking the silence. We find the source of the resentment. That's the boss. No puzzles, just a search and destroy. I paused, looking at the difficulty rating again. But the abyss level is higher than I expected. This won't be easy. The others nodded, their faces grim. In this world, difficulty went from simple to nightmare. Abyss was the second highest. Usually, you'd need a full 10-man squad with perfect roles, tanks, healers, and DPS, all at high levels just to stand a chance. This was a level 25 realm. We were a group of 4. Yunyu and Tao Tao were level 18, I was level 17, and Go Sheng was only 14. On paper, we were dead meat. But in a secret realm like this, if you leave, the entrance vanishes and spawns somewhere else. You get one shot. We'll take it slow, Tao Tao said after a long silence. With Yunyu's utility, I think we can manage. We'll clear the mobs one by one and grind the boss down. I didn't come this far to walk away empty-handed. I wouldn't be able to sleep for a month. Yunyu didn't speak, but she gave a firm nod. I smiled. I'm with you. We're already here. Let's see what this place is made of. Wait. Go Sheng stammered, his voice shaking. Does anyone care what I think? 4 of us against a level 25 abyss realm? That's suicide. This place is creepy as hell. Can't we just pretend we never saw it? He kept rambling, clearly terrified, but I just looked at Yunyu. I trusted her skills to keep us hidden if things got too hot. It was time to move. Tao Tao cut in quickly, her voice tight with a seriousness that didn't do much to calm Go Sheng down. She looked at the dark entrance and admitted that this difficulty was way beyond what she and Yunyu had expected. If it had been a normal secret realm, the 2 of them could have cleared it alone. But for an abyss level, they needed us. There was no other way. She suggested we all be honest about our stats, skills, and class traits so we could actually coordinate once the fighting started. I nodded immediately. It made sense. Seeing that we were all committed to going in, Goshing finally gave up on complaining and fell in line. Tao Tao went first to show she was serious about the partnership. She raised her short bow, and suddenly, a glow erupted from her gear. Her bow, her tunic, her leather pants, and her boots all shimmered with a distinct purple light. I stared. She was decked out in 4 pieces of purple-grade equipment. Her bracers and belt were blue-grade, likely high-end pieces with great stats. The only slots she had empty were her rings, necklace, and helmet. That didn't surprise me. Those items were incredibly rare for archers. Even a basic white-grade ring could sell for the price of a top-tier blue-grade weapon. At our level, the stat boost wasn't worth the insane cost unless you were drowning in cash. Tao Tao clearly came from a wealthy family, but she was smart enough to spend her gold where it actually mattered. After showing off her gear, she explained her role. She told us her damage output was high and her defense was surprisingly solid, almost on par with a heavy armored class of the same level. She wouldn't get one shot if a beast broke through the lines. She told the frontline players not to worry too much about her if the formation crumbled. Then she held out her hand. A small flame flickered to life in her palm. I wasn't surprised since I'd seen her use fire-based sword skills before. But then, she flicked her wrist. The flame transformed into a jagged shard of ice, then a swirling miniature cyclone, then a crackling spark of lightning, and finally a clump of dense earth. She shook her hand, and the elements vanished. She looked at us and explained that this was the core trait of her hidden class, the Elven Ranger. Right now, she could control fire, ice, wind, lightning, and earth. She was a one-woman elemental arsenal.